Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive on the explainer. Today, we're really getting into the weeds with a highly nuanced aggregate-level critique from Chapter 20 of Nāgārjuna's Mūlamadhyamakakārikā. Now, if you've been following our journey through the earlier chapters, you already know that Nāgārjuna systematically dismantles literally every category of inherent existence. But today we're taking that deconstruction to its absolute limit by examining the very engine of reality as we conventionally understand it, the aggregate of causes and conditions.
Okay, let's dive into this. Take a moment to just visually ground yourself in this aesthetic, the serene Buddha, the blooming tree, the temples. It perfectly represents the everyday conventional appearance of cause and effect, right? We plant a seed, a tree grows. We perform an action, and a result naturally follows. But today, we're going to initiate a rigorous 11-step Madhyamaka reasoning process to look way beneath that beautiful surface. We're going to fundamentally question whether this collective force actually possesses the inherent power to produce anything at all.
Here's our dialectical ladder for today. 1. The triad of causality. 2. Applying the tetralemma. 3. Emptiness and dependent origination. 4. The illusion of causality. 5. The middle way. And finally, 6. Abiding in suchness. We are methodically ascending all the way from conventional assumptions to primordial suchness.
Part 1. The triad of causality.
So, as peers familiar with the text, you'll definitely recall that in Chapter 1, Nāgārjuna focused intensely on questioning the causal power of individual conditions. He broke down the absolute reality of single factors. But here in Chapter 20, we shift gears to a much more complex scenario, the collective. This collective is known as the samagri, or the aggregate. It's the complete, collective set of causes and conditions that we all conventionally accept as totally necessary to produce an effect. Think of a sprout, right? It's not just the seed. It's the seed, the soil, the water, the sunlight, the whole shebang acting together. This chapter questions a fundamental, widely accepted assumption in Buddhist thought. Can this collective actually, inherently generate a product?
So the crucial point is establishing step 1 of our reasoning. We have to clearly identify the 3 spheres of the causal triad that we're about to deconstruct. First, the cause, the producer, or the aggregate of causes and conditions. Second, causality itself, the actual action or process of production. And third, the effect, or the product. Now, we usually assume these 3 spheres are distinct, inherently real entities interacting with each other like gears in a machine. Nāgārjuna is about to show us, quite brilliantly, that this isn't the case.
Moving to Part 2, applying the tetralemma.
This brings us to Step 2, which is really the core of Nāgārjuna's analytical engine. Here, we systematically apply the fourfold logical negation of the tetralemma: affirmation, negation, both, and neither, to the causal aggregate. And when we test these positions across the existence of the product within the aggregate, the identity of the cause to the effect, and their relationship in time, well, we discover something absolutely profound. Every single extreme position leads to an inescapable contradiction and absurdity. Let's break this down.
Just consider Nāgārjuna's own rhetorical inquiry from verses 1 through 4. If the product inherently exists within the aggregate before it's actually produced, isn't production entirely redundant? I mean, why produce what's already there? But flip the logic for a second. If the product is entirely non-existent within the aggregate lacks any intrinsic basis to produce it. How on earth can causes and conditions generate something with which they have absolutely zero inherent connection? And of course, the options of both and neither are just logically incoherent. The aggregate cannot inherently contain the product, nor can it inherently lack it.
We see this absurdity continue when we look at identity in verses 19 and 20. If the cause and the effect are inherently identical, then production equates to self-creation, which is literally nonsensical. The originator and the originated collapse into the exact same entity. But if they are inherently different, then a cause is completely indistinguishable from a non-cause. If there is no intrinsic tie between them, production becomes completely arbitrary. And naturally, claiming that they are both identical and different, or neither identical nor different, that just compounds the absurdity. You can't just combine 2 incoherent concepts to create a coherent one.
And what about time? In verses 12 through 14, Nāgārjuna completely dismantles concomitance. Can there ever be a simultaneous connection of a past effect with a past, future, or present cause? Think about it. If cause and product overlap in time, production is redundant. But if they're completely separate, like the cause ceasing entirely before the product arises, then the product is basically emerging from a non-cause. And again, claiming they're both simultaneous and separate, or neither, it offers no coherent temporal framework. Time simply cannot salvage an inherently flawed causal relationship.
Part 3. Emptiness and dependent origination. So, we have reached a critical juncture here. Because the aggregate cannot inherently produce the effect, we hit step 3, emptiness, or shunyata. We absolutely must conclude that the aggregate, the causality, and the product are entirely empty of inherent essence. They are never absolute. There's no real opposition, and there are no real absolute opposites. A cause isn't some independent thing acting upon another independent thing called an effect.
But listen, emptiness is not nothingness. That's a huge misconception. Step 4 reveals that this emptiness logically necessitates dependent origination. The three spheres of causality are inseparable. They are dependently co-originated, completely interdependent, co-defined, and co-evolving. Causality functions merely as a conceptual framework, co-imputed by the mind. They are just mere designations and names we apply to a dynamic, flowing reality.
Let's move to and see how this builds into step 5, the union of the two truths. This is absolutely vital. Phenomena are empty precisely because they are dependently originated, and they can dependently originate only because they are completely empty of inherent essence. Dependent origination and emptiness mutually establish causality as a relatively useful convention. Actually, scratch that. They aren't just useful, they are essential tools, but they are never absolute realities.
Part 4. The illusion of causality. Having firmly established the logic, you might be wondering, how does this deconstructed, empty causality actually appear and function in our everyday lived reality? I mean, if it's not absolutely real, what is it? Listen to Nāgārjuna's poetic paradox from verse 24. The product is not produced by the aggregate, nor is the product not produced by the aggregate. This isn't just wordplay for the sake of it. He is aggressively pushing our minds beyond dualistic logic. He's demanding an intuitive grasp of emptiness, showing us that conventional functionality exists perfectly well without absolute causation. And this naturally brings us to step 6. To anchor this heavy logic, the text uses some incredibly vivid analogies. Because they are empty and dependently co-arising, the three spheres of causality are like illusions. They're like reflections in a mirror, mirages, dreams, or echoes. They are functionally there, yet not there. This really gives our reasoning mind a place to rest between all these intense dialectical steps, allowing us to actually feel the texture of an interdependent reality. Now for step 7, we apply the generalized tetralemma. The true nature of causality is not this, it is not non-this, it's not both, and it's certainly not neither. And there is no secret fifth option either. We are stripping away all our fabricated models, all our tetrads, all diodes. The true reality of the causal aggregate is completely beyond all conditioned dualistic conceptual proliferation.
Part 5. The middle way. And this brilliantly illustrates step 9. Having dismantled all these extremes, what is the proper philosophical and practical stance we should take? The middle way threads the needle perfectly. On the left side, we completely avoid objectivism, realism, monism, or radical oneness. On the right, we avoid subjectivism, idealism, nihilism, solipsism, dualism, or extreme pluralism. We even free ourselves from relationism, processism, and the very concept of a solid middle itself. Which leads straight into step 10, our practical application. We must use causality conventionally as a highly useful tool. We still engage with the world, we acknowledge interdependence, and we make choices. But we do so without attachment, without reification, without effortful grasping, and definitely without absolute absolutes. We use the tools of cause and effect while fully knowing their illusory, empty, true nature. We finally relinquish the illusion of ultimate mastery over outcomes. Finally, part 6, abiding in suchness. This is the ultimate, liberating destination of Nāgārjuna's rigorous path. Step 11 is the profound conclusion of our entire reasoning process. When we truly see that the aggregate, the causality, and the product are totally empty, we might as well perceive everything as primordially equal, pure, perfect, complete, divine, and unified. We are completely free from the conceptual limitations of many, one, both, or neither. We dissolve the delusions of permanence and nothingness alike. We simply abide in reality exactly as it is. We abide in suchness.
By exposing the absolute emptiness of the entire causal process, Nāgārjuna has systematically dismantled our samsaric fixation on trying to manipulate and control outcomes. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the challenge it presents to you. As an advanced practitioner, how will you perceive your own actions and outcomes now? How does your daily life change when you truly realize the engine of causality is just a beautifully functioning yet inherently empty mirage? Let that question sit with you until our next explainer.